We're in your culinary book, and now we're in chapter 11. We're going to be talking about mealtime favorites. I'm going to start with soups and stews. So in soups and stews, you have to have what's called stock or broth in your soup or stew. So a flavorful liquid that is made by simmering foods such as meat and vegetables in water is known as stock. And so a lengthy cooking time extracts a rich flavor of the vegetables, meat, and bones. And this basically puts together what is called stock. And it can be used and referred interchangeable with broth. But broth is actually just similar to stock. It's the liquid made from cooking meat and vegetables in water, but however, no bones are included. And seasoning is added to flavor the broth. So although it says down here, we also have bone broth. They say bone broth is usually stock, even though it's called bone broth. It's a little, because it has bones in it, right? So that's the difference between stock and broth. That stock basically doesn't have stock has the bones and everything, and broth is just the liquid, right? So flavorful stocks and broths have many uses. They are commonly used as bases for soups, such as chicken noodle soup or vegetable soup. But they also can be used as cooking liquids for like rice and pasta, or in vegetables for the liquids. Stocks and broths are also important in ingredients in gravy, so we know that. While making stock or broth, you should use low-cost meats. Tough cuts of meats are okay because they take the long cooking process tenderizes the meats. And so then the meat will become much less tough. So you don't need to get expensive cuts of meat for your stock or broth. Also, for additional flavor, large pieces of vegetables such as onions and celery and carrots can be simmered in the meat. And so then, with the meat, I should say, simmered with the meat and the stock. And after the stock or broth is cooked, the meat used to make broth can be added to the soup or used in other dishes. So basically, you're cooking the stock. You're going to put in your meat and in your stock to cook it, and also put in vegetables and onion and celery and carrots, all to be simmered in it to make the have a lot of flavor, right? Bouillon cubes. If you've seen those, there's a picture of bouillon cubes right there. Bouillon cubes or granules or paste can be used to instantly make a clear, flavorful broth. Bouillon is very convenient and can be used in many ways. It can be drunk as a clear broth in drinking. You could just drink bouillon broth, or you can combine it with vegetables and other ingredients to make a soup. If using bouillon to make a broth or soup, use 1 bouillon cube or 1 teaspoon of granules or paste per cup. So 1 bouillon cube or 1 teaspoon per cup of water. So usually they have directions on the bouillon cubes there. So bouillon cubes can be added to other dishes too, so you can use them when you're cooking rice and pasta. A lot of times I put bouillon cubes, like when you're cooking in a crock pot or stuff. You can add bouillon in different recipes. But it says that bouillon is very high in sodium, high in salt. So it should be limited for those diets that need to be lowered in salt, right? So now types of soups and stews. So thickened soup. In addition to using stock or broth, many types of soups include a roux or a puree of some kind of ingredient in the soup to make it thicker. So of course, you have broth is very thin, so you add this roux, what is roux again? It's going to be taking flour and some kind of fat broth or fat mixed with it, making that flour into, or some kind of purees of vegetables to make it thicken the soup or stew. A soup thickened by pureed ingredients will have a coarser texture than a soup made using with a flour roux, right? So cream soup is a thickened soup with a thin white sauce base. Since it is made with a roux that is mixed with a dairy product, it makes it white. So using cream instead of milk will give the soup a thicker texture and a richer flavor. Bisque. Have you ever heard of bisque? The word bisque? The bisque is a cream soup made with shellfish. So whenever you see bisque, you know it has to do with fish, right? Bisque and fish, is typically quickened or thickened, I should say, by roux, by pureeing some of the ingredients together, and you do that in making a bisque. So you'll add together, you'll basically have the cream base there of a roux, which is flour and the fat of the meat there to make a thicken the broth to make it into a bisque. Also, chowder. Chowder is a thickened cream or tomato-based soup that is made with fish, shellfish, or vegetables. So you can make even a vegetable chowder. So using that cream or tomato-based soup. Then, of course, there's stews. Stew is basically a thickened soup that can be thickened by making roux or adding flour or cornstarch to make that stew. Let's go on to the next page here. Stew is slightly different from soup because the vegetables and meat pieces are heartier in the stew and because the liquid is more similar to gravy. So when you have a stew, it looks more similar to a gravy mixture, and then you're going to be adding a lot of vegetables and meat together with that stew. And then we have cold soups. So what are some cold soups? Well, cold soups can be savory or sweet, and they range from a flavorful Spanish gazpacho. Gazpacho is really good. It's like a gazpacho reminds me, of a Mexican, let's see, salsa. Kind of a salsa, but it's basically a soup, and it's a cold soup. Many cold soups do not require cooking. So we know that because of the low temperatures and dull taste, you add more seasoning to cold soups than you do to hot soups. And sometimes there's fruit soups too. They're made with fruit in them. So those are usually cold soups. Okay, prepared soup products. There are many prepared soup products on the market, and these are very versatile and easy to use. Some of them, if they're canned, may be high in sodium, though, so you have to be careful of the salt content, especially if you're on a low sodium diet. When preparing canned, refrigerated, or frozen soups, simply heat and serve. If a soup's label says that the product is condensed, though, then you must add water or milk to the condensed soup. And to give it a proper texture. So those are as for canned soups. Dry soup mix contain bouillon, seasonings, and dehydrated vegetables or dehydrated meat. And you have to add water to rehydrate the dry soup. And these mixes can also be used as a seasoning ingredients for dips, gravies, meatloafs, casseroles, sauces, and other foods. So you can take these dry soup mix and mix them in to flavor other things, and adding to them. But they're always going to need to be added water because they're dry, and usually have directions in the package for that. So storing and reheating soup. If refrigerated soup will remain fresh for like 3 to 4 days. However, soups made with fish or shellfish should be eaten just the same day, because they can actually contain bacteria otherwise. So if it's shellfish, you need to eat it one day, or fish. But otherwise, other soups you can keep in the refrigerator for a couple days. When rehydrating broth soups, use medium heat and stir occasionally until the soup is heated all the way through. And when you're reheating soups containing milk or cream, you got to heat them very slowly on low heat so you don't scorch the milk in it. So cream soups can separate or curdle if heated too quickly or at too high a temperature. So low temperatures for cream soups. Most soups freeze well, up to 3 months. You can freeze soups in a freezer-safe, airtight containers. And since the food expands as it freezes, and could force the lid off the container, so do not to fill up your containers too full. So you have like at least a ½ inch headspace on top of the container when you freeze it. So once it expands, it doesn't cause the container to pop off the top. So freezing can alter the taste or texture of some ingredients. So taste the soup that has been frozen, and when you thaw it and reheat it before, taste it to see if it's tastes right? Because sometimes it can change the taste. Avoid freezing soups that contain potatoes because potatoes could become very grainy in the freezer. Cooked potatoes could be added later on, instead of, you can actually freeze the soup without the potatoes, then add the potatoes later. But freezing potatoes doesn't work too well. So let's go back here. I want to go over a couple things and we'll finish this area of soups. Okay, let's see here. Here we go, tips and techniques. This is what I was looking. Making soup. So use long, slow cooking to extract and blend the flavors of each soup ingredient. So use the correct size of pan. If you're preparing soup in a pan that's too small, it will make the soup take longer to heat. And some of the vegetables could become overcooked and mushy before the other ingredients have cooked through. So if a pan is too large, it may cause the soup to heat so quickly that the ingredients are not cooked thoroughly before the liquid begins to evaporate or scorch. So you can't have a pan that's too small or a pan that's too large. When thickening a soup, mix the roux, flour, cornstarch with a cold liquid to make a slur. The slurry, they call them slurry. Whenever you're mixing up cold ingredients, they call it a slurry. And this will help prevent the starch from clumping when it's added to a hot soup. After adding milk and cream, boiling the soup could cause the dairy to scorch or curdle. Since boiling is recommended for some soups that are thickened with roux, follow the recipe's directions. But for best result, gently warm milk or cream before adding the liquid to the hot soup. So you can see. But remove the fat that cooks out of the meat products by using a spoon to skim it off the top. If the hot soup or allows the soup to be cooked to sit in the refrigerator for a long time, if you put it in the refrigerator, and then you'll get this I say like the fat just comes to the top. I don't know what to call that, but I say skim off the fat. That's what I say. So you're going to take off that fat that comes to the top. The hardened fat then can be lifted off and discarded. So soups are commonly garnished with a variety of toppings too for soups. Food for thought. Creative soup combinations. So this tells about, as for what to put in soups. It says, after learning to make a simple soup base, you'll be able to adapt the flavors to make a multitude of combinations. Since nearly all soups begin with some form of broth or stock base or cream base, learning how to make a base will allow you to combine your favorite foods to make your delicious soup. So making soup could also become a favorite technique to prepare leftovers in a new way. You can use leftovers in a soup. There are ingredients that can be added to the base after it's made. However, some ingredients such as onions and garlic should be partially cooked before you add them to your soup. For soups with broth or stock base, you can add your favorite proteins, or you can add your favorite vegetables and seasonings that will blend best with those flavors. Some possible ingredients to add include proteins such as sausage, chicken, ham, legumes, starches such as cooked rice or pasta or potatoes, vegetables such as carrots, celery, onions, broccoli, corn, and greens such as kale, spinach. They could all be added to your soup. For example, you may wish to add chicken, vegetables, and noodles to chicken stock to make a classic chicken noodle soup. Or add tomatoes, beans, vegetables, and pasta to vegetable broth to make a hearty vegetable minestrone. So As with broth or stock base, a variety of proteins, vegetables, and seasonings can also be added to a cream base. To make a cream base, make your roux, your roux with your flour, and flour and your fat together, and then add milk to make the base. And some common ingredients to add to a cream soup base are potatoes, mushrooms. There's always cream of potatoes, cream of mushrooms, or cream of broccoli, or cream of broccoli and cheese. Other foods and seasonings may be added to give the soup more flavor. The toppings you add to your soup can vary, enhancing the visual appearance of the soup. So you can actually highlight your chosen ingredients by the topping. Some popular toppings to use are like cheese, crackers on top, croutons, tortilla chips, sour cream, fresh herbs can all go on top of your soup. Whatever your dietary needs or your flavor preferences are, you can prepare a soup that is both nutritious and satisfying. So it gets to the point where soups get kind of fun, putting them together and which kind of soup that you would really like. So let's stop there. I was going to go into sandwiches, but let's go into sandwiches in the next video.